Hello, everyone, and welcome to the September Rocky Mountain Railroad Club meeting. It's 7:30, so we'll get going here in just a second. I'm still making sure all the streams and everything are up. All right. So as usual, thank you all for attending. We'll keep you mostly on mute during the presentation. Bryan's presentation is going to be in three different segments. So kind of the thought was that after the end of each segment, we'll kind of open the floor to questions before we move on to the next show. So with that, I will kick it over to Dave and Denny, who here we go. That's Denny to unmute too. Dave, would you like to kick us off?
I was going to let Denny start.
Well, good evening. I think we're on here. I've got a new computer, and so I think we're all coming through clearly. Thank you, Nathan, for doing the electronics on this fabulous show that we're going to have tonight. And it's into September, hard to believe. And I don't know who managed to get to Chama. I saw some people down there in Antonito, but that was quite a show with some of the steam that was down there. And I went on and saw some double headers down at Durango. So that was a pretty neat weekend, to say the least. I think this upcoming weekend, the live steamers have got their annual 3-day program going on. And that was certainly fun this summer. So anybody that's on that's maybe thinking of going out there, it's more than worth doing for sure.
Tell them where that is, Denny.
Huh?
Tell them where that is.
Well, the directions are in the rail report. It's east, kind of like Bennett. It's kind of like would be like kind of northeast of Bennett. It's not hard to find, really.
I think it's Byers.
Byers? Okay, it's out that direction. Strasburg, in that area. So they've got quite a layout there, and it's quite a ride out on some of the trains, and more than worth doing. And what accommodating people, wonderful people, good railroaders, and wonderful people. They built a new station. They will have food out there. I saw that they got food truck both days coming, so that'll be really nice also. And the other pitch I'd make to everybody is we do have September, October. We have a nominating committee coming together, and we do need to look at officers and board members for next year. So if anybody has any idea to nominate, we'd sort of like to have them. And it's legal to nominate yourself, quite frankly. If you've got interest in serving on the board, we'd be more than happy to know that. So I think we're at about 400 memberships. We picked up a few new members recently, which has been nice. Mike Tonetti keeps sending me these things to send out other rail reports. So that's always a good thing to do. And other than that, I will make mention that the board meeting via Zoom will be next Monday. So look forward to seeing all officers and board members there at that point. And I will turn that over to Dave for some more announcements and introduction to tonight's presentation.
Okay, and actually along that idea of fishing for board members, I think anybody that's a current Rocky Club member now, we've pretty much decided amongst the board that if you'd like to be a board member, we have been doing those meetings via Zoom, so you wouldn't necessarily have to drive to Denver for those meetings. So maybe that'll entice a few of our further away members.
Thank you. Good point.
I talked to a guy in Southwest Kansas today that's considering maybe doing that. I don't know. So moving on.
Did you actually sucker him into doing that?
He didn't say no. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no. He didn't tell me where to go. So also along the line of board members and whatnot, one of our former officers of the club, Carolyn Blau, passed away in the last few weeks. I wanted to mention that. And her husband, Jimmy, is also a past president of the club. as Denny mentioned, there's been a lot of things going on in narrow gauge land. We did have a club excursion up to Como. They had their annual Boreas Pass Railroad Days in late August, and we had a little club excursion day the following day, just so that we wouldn't interfere with what they had going. Obviously, their crowds were down a little bit this year because their steam locomotive wasn't quite ready. They think it'll be ready next year, and who knows, maybe they'll even have this mysterious South Park Zephyr running, which is a smaller rail vehicle. It was kind of nifty to be able to run up and down some of their new tracks. They had at least one guy up there with a motorized, pop car, speeder, track motor, whatever you want to call it. And so there was some rare mileage, and we were able to raise enough, a little bit of money and make a donation from the Rocky Mountain Railroad Club to the restoration efforts in Como. So we always feel good about that. And then, as people have talked about, there's all kinds of things that were happening down at the Cumberson Toltec and the Durango and Silverton in the last few weeks, with special photo runs and engines that came in from various parts of the country. There were more live under steam engines at Antonito than anybody has seen in quite a while. A couple of wood burners from Nevada. Rio Grande Southern number 20 came down from the Colorado Railroad Museum in Golden. And the 315 has been kind of on loan there from Durango and Silverton, although it's owned by a different group. And it's been painted up as the 425, which was the former number for it back in the day. So lots of neat things there. Trains Magazine did some photo charters, and that was really well received. And not to forget our friends at Railfan and Railroad Magazine. I think they were just doing other things in other parts of the country. Also, the Union Pacific number 4014 had a big month-long tour and got in and out of New Orleans before the hurricane, and came back through Denver about a week ago. And I think that the guys on that crew are probably glad to have it put away for a few days so that they can catch up on some family and some sleeping. Also, there will be some Galloping Goose events coming up on the Cumberson Toltec in the next few coming weeks. And RGS 20 from the museum is still down at the Cumberson Toltec for a couple more weeks. There's some things happening there. So all of this Victorian Iron Roundup is not quite done yet, although the official name for that event that's kind of come and gone. John Bush, past president of the Cumberson Toltec, will probably be the presenter for our November meeting, and he will catch us up on a lot of the goings on that have been happening. We're still not quite locked in on the presenter for our October 12th meeting, so we will let the members know in the newsletter. I should know that in the next couple of days, but right now I don't have a name for you. And
we should probably mention,
go ahead,
Dave, that October we're going to go back to in person, right?
That is our plan. We're going to try and have our first meeting back at our regular meeting hall. And Nathan and I are going to try real hard, for those of you that are farther away, to find a way to stream this, even if you're not there in Barnes Hall with us. So have patience with us. We'll have to concentrate on doing a good job for those that are there in the room. And then anything we can do that gets out on the internet is kind of a bonus. So we're feeling our way through this. Anyway, I think at this point, unless somebody has something else to announce, I will introduce Bryan Bechtold. Nathan or Denny, you have anything else?
No, let's go for it.
All right. Well, Bryan has graciously said he would do a program or 3 short ones for us tonight. I think it's been 3 or 4 years since Bryan's done a show for us. So, Bryan, why don't you take it from here and tell us what you've got?
Sure. Thanks, Dave. You've mentioned everything that I'm going to talk about tonight, so maybe I don't even need to show my program, right?
No, you should. You should.
Because we're going to see some of the 4014, as you called it, or big boy.
I know. I've never said it that way. I always say 44.
Yeah, it was kind of like I thought maybe you were trying to fool us or something.
I fooled
thinking it was
myself.
something
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
And I actually slipped in a fourth short story. I do have shots from the Victorian Roundup. I was there for a few days of that. So
I did not mention the Southwest Chief, so at least I didn't go there.
Southwest Chief, and we're going to start off talking about El Paso and their relatively new streetcar system. So let me see if I can share my screen here, and I'm going to start my program here and see if everyone can see it. We have a totally black screen there for everybody.
Yep, looks good to go.
All right, excellent. This is a program that I put together at the very end of 2019. So most of these images date from that time period. And so let's go back to July 4th weekend of 2019, and it was very hot. I had 4 days off, and I wasn't doing anything. And I looked at my wife and I said, you know what? I'm going to drive to El Paso for the weekend. And so I did. And on my way down there, I managed to see Colorado's latest streetcar, which is this former Pittsburgh trolley car in Trinidad, Colorado. I still don't really understand why it's there, but it's close to the depot in Trinidad, and that I think Dave Schaff was the model for the motorman in this shot. But I bring that up because I was going down to El Paso to see the streetcars there. What's new in El Paso? This is our first little segment. So El Paso has long been famous for having one of the very few international streetcar lines that would cross a border. And they have, in a sense, resurrected that streetcar. But before we look at what it looks like today and open those gates, I'm going to go back to the mid-'80s when I first visited El Paso. The streetcar, the international line had finished or ended there about 1973. And yet, when I took these pictures in the mid-'80s, most of the streetcars still existed. This is a shot of them being stored out at the El Paso airport. And look at that very car on the end there, 1514. We'll see some of that a little bit later on here. And downtown, the car barn was very much intact, and you can see the ladder track here. And a lot of the tracks were around. This is the immigration side of the American side, and you can see the streetcar tracks were there, as well as the overhead wire. And there's some 15, 16 years after abandonment. And again, you can see the tracks in the street here and bits of the overhead wire on the International Bridge. So this was a loop that went from downtown El Paso over the bridge into Mexico and back again. And it was a hugely profitable line. And it ended mostly because of various political issues with Mexico and staffing and who was going to pay for what and that kind of thing. Again, a picture from the 80s. You can see the track still there. And what it looked like on the El Paso side, the wires were down, but you can see the double track leading into downtown. And a few of the cars made it out to like a job service center, you know, where they were training apprentices and stuff. And the idea was that they were going to refurbish these cars for some kind of service, but they never went anywhere. And probably not a lot of people had the knowledge on how to restore a PCC, which is a pretty sophisticated electronically or electrically since they're not electronic. But all these cars originally had come from San Diego, and San Diego had purchased these in 1937. And so pretty old from a streetcar standpoint. So let's open the gate here on what El Paso looks like today. And there's 1514. This is the very car that we saw sitting out at the airport in the previous shot. And look at that. Here it comes out of the car barn. So El Paso has resurrected the trolley. It does not cross into Mexico anymore, but they have completely refurbished 6 of the original cars. And you can see that huge mural above there of 1511, and here is 1511 doing its honors. So they have 6 cars altogether, and those 6 cars use 3 different paint schemes. So let's take a little ride here. Very typical PCC trucks. And it has all the right details like handholds and bullet lights in the ceiling. And you can see that these are all rebuilt by Brookville, and Brookville very graciously here has given credit that it was originally manufactured by the St. Louis Car Company in 1937, and even gives the former San Diego number on there as well, which is pretty cool. And look at the driver's position, which has been thoroughly updated. When I went down there, this in July, this had been open since November of 2018. So these cars were in pristine condition. Here's a little look at the loop that happens. If you look on the extreme right of this map, you can see a little green line. This is border highway. That's actually the border. So you can see that the tracks get within about 2 blocks of the border, and they make a figure 8. So the green circle you see there crosses over at Franklin Street and then goes up Staunton Street, turns at the very top, or the far left, at the University of Texas El Paso, and then heads back down to Franklin and completes the figure 8. In the background of this shot here, you can see the international bridge with the flags of Mexico and the United States. You can see that's the border. So heading up from downtown, it's a real streetcar system. They run in the streets and along the edges and in the middle as well. And here we are passing the convention center. Cars run every 20 minutes. We're passing their little baseball field for their AAA team, and there's the competition, the electric scooter. And on to Franklin Street, and this is where the cars cross over the loop. And of course, I picked a really great time to be in El Paso. It was only 105 degrees there that weekend. The stops on Franklin Street and a car coming off the upper loop. And this is the, in my opinion, the drabbest of the 3 paint schemes, but still a very nice one. These are all old National City Lines paint schemes. National City Lines was a GM subsidiary that bought up streetcar lines all over the country. And you can see the 2 loops converging here. And I ended up spending a heck of a lot of time in this corner and not realizing it at the time when I took this picture, but the Hotel Gardner in this shot ended up being my hotel for the night. And that very large window, I guess this 4-pane window right above the blue awning on the left. That was my room right there on the corner above a very good pizza parlor. And the view from the pizza parlor. The car completing the loop and heading up a very San Francisco-like hill, which we'll see here in a moment. The interior is pretty classic PCC with, you know, two-tone color scheme. But the seats have been rearranged a little bit. Like in this case here, you've got room to put bicycles on board. Otherwise, fairly typical, except for one car. The 1511 has always been the pride of the fleet, and even back in the 70s, this car would receive various unique paint jobs from local artists. And it is set up the way the cars operated when it was a cross-border car line. All the seats were, as you see them here, facing the walls so that you can maximize the number of standing passengers. And just a little quip here from this district representative saying, our streetcars are older than the famous San Francisco streetcars. And what's more unique is that the very same streetcars that at one point traveled over 500 times a day between Juarez and El Paso. Well, that's somewhat true, but not completely. So as I mentioned, there's quite a bit of hill climbing here on the second part of this loop, and you can see it's operating straight down the middle of this road. And you could almost see a cable car making this hill, but I think El Paso has really put together a very impressive piece of streetcar for sure. And at the very top of the grade, downtown, way off there to the right. So this loop is at the top is very different from downtown. We'll see that here in a moment. I mean, you're passing mansions like this one here. And there's an entertainment district. There's all kinds of restaurants and shopping and that kind of thing. And for a photographer, it's paradise. All kinds of angles. These particular shots here are at the very end of the line on the north end, and this is the University of Texas at El Paso stop. Great opportunity to take some detail shots, and as I said, these cars are just beautifully restored. The paint just gleams, and I mean, you can even see reflections of the clouds in the paint here. And just like any other streetcar system, it has pretty funky track, and this is a great example of that, where they bring the track over to the curb to allow for wheelchair loading and that sort of thing, and then move it gently back out into traffic again. I was really impressed that this guy was riding his bike up that hill in 105-degree heat. Back down to Franklin Street again. The center of the two loops in the very background there is the baseball stadium. Car coming off the loop. upper loop, and we're going to head into the lower downtown part. So El Paso has this weird zone between, I guess, the business district and the border. And that's what you're looking at here. And this is kind of like a dead zone. It's like everything here, maybe 4 or 5 blocks of length, feels abandoned. It's just been closed down. And I think what they're trying to do is get the streetcar to perhaps help revitalize this space. You have a lot of small shops like this as you get closer to the border. And when you get down to the border itself, those last 2 blocks at the border are just extremely rich with all kinds of activity and little shops and things that you can buy. But then, as I said, there's this dead zone going north into downtown. So now we're at the very extreme south end of the line, and the Mexico itself is just 2 blocks to the right. And this is a shot again at the border, and most of these folks you see on the sidewalk, they're coming off the international bridge to Mexico. And I threw this in here because you can see, even in 2019, there are still remains of the old streetcar route over the border right here in the foreground. And looking the other way, you can see how close the new streetcar gets to the old. And if you looking into that very vibrant area right at the border that I was talking about, you can see all the little shops there. There's the border bridge in the background. And have you ever seen so many utility poles in all of your life? This is like insane. And this car is at the far end, making the loop, making the curve here to take the loop back to the north. And the streetcars aren't the only thing to see in El Paso. This is the Santa Fe Freight House, still beautiful shape and still used by BNSF. And this is about a block away from the trolley line, which can be seen in the right. You can see the word Joe's Tire Service. That's where the trolley's at, so very close. Worth a quick visit. El Paso also has a very pretty railroad station with the tri-weekly service of, oh, what is that? What do they call that Amtrak train that just makes its way to Los Angeles? What is that thing? I'm sure one of you, Dave, you can probably throw it out there with what it's called.
I'm not sure myself.
Oh, what is that train called? My goodness, it just escapes me. But
Somebody will get it during our Q&A
yes,
session.
but as luck would have it, I was not there on a passenger train day. But here's the interior, and pretty quiet for sure. And this was all pre-COVID. In the background, they have this really interesting mural where they've paid homage to the trolley car and railroads. And look, Ma, way up there in the corner is a monorail. So maybe one day they'll want to have a monorail. I don't know.
Huh.
And about 3 blocks away from the depot is this wonderfully stuffed and mounted 440 that is in the Welcome Center for El Paso. And as you can see, it's a beauty and well worth a quick trip inside to check it out. So we'll just have a few more shots here of El Paso. And again, there's the Hotel Gardner. And So I needed a place to stay for the night. So I thought, oh, let me see if this is really a hotel. And in fact, it is. And when's the last time you saw a wooden telephone booth in a hotel complete with like a 1948 yellow page just hanging there off to one side? And that's the desk there in the back. And yeah, this is my kind of hotel, very funky. I couldn't really tell what it was supposed to be kept in its original state, or if they just never bothered to remodel the place. But either way, I absolutely love the place. But there's a view from my window. The only problem was, however, it was 105 degrees out there that day, and there was no air conditioning in this place. And so I had to keep the window open. And while I was there, the roller derby team showed up for pizza down below me. And this guy, as I'm sitting here at the pizza joint drinking a beer, this guy decides to set up this one-man band at 10:30 at night. It took him over an hour to get all of his gear together before he could start playing. And I thought, I'm in for a very long night here at the Gardner Hotel. And indeed I was. And thankfully, the trolley runs until 2:00 in the morning. So I just hopped on the trolley and rode around for a long time instead. But that's it for our El Paso segment. So I'll stop here and see if anyone has any questions.
Sleep is overrated. You didn't need to sleep anyway. I think Kirk was asking, and just to reiterate, this was 2019, correct?
That is correct. It was July 4th weekend, 2019.
So if anybody's got questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to ask something.
Yeah, and I would just say that I can't see any of you because my presentation's taking up a full screen. So if you've written anything in the chat, I can't read that either.
So when did it stop going into Mexico?
I wasn't able to get like an exact date. It was kind of fits and starts there at the end, but I believe the last runs were in 1973.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and San Francisco, of course, has its trolley festival, and they have one of the trolley festival cars painted as an El Paso car, just like this paint job here.
They look brand new.
Like I said, they're absolutely gorgeous, and they had only been running about 8 months at that point.
Well patronized?
Not as much as I would hope. I think here in America, one of the things that we just are not we're not used to operating in like a world where you're a pedestrian and you can hop on a trolley and go do things. Everything is done in the car, and so it's really I think it's really a stretch to get people out of their cars. It's tough. And when I was down there, they had eliminated the fare for I think 6 months. It was totally free to ride. I think otherwise it was like $2 a ride or something like that. But I wasn't like overwhelmed with the number of people getting on and off the car. But I wasn't there during when college was in session or anything like that. So I don't know anything about ridership figures. Okay.
All right.
Hearing none, I'll move on here to our next theme.
There you go.
Gosh, we're back to Trinidad again and more trolley cars, and this is now November of 2019, and somebody has already decided that, hey, let's break out the headlight of the trolley car since our last visit, which was kind of a bummer to see.
And I was not the model for the motorman either. No,
I think that you were, Dave.
no. That was Tom Hanks.
Again,
probably.
I'm not sure what this is all about. I don't know. The Americana Experience is not the name of the restaurant behind here. That restaurant is called the Purple Toad. So I don't know what this Pittsburgh trolley is doing here, but
So much class and irrelevance here.
yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's kind of weird. And I just haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about what's going on there. But okay, betting on the chief. What is that? So I convinced my lovely wife, Lisa, that, hey, Amtrak is doing some really cheap fares. What do you say we drive down to Trinidad and we take the train to Santa Fe for a 3-day weekend? And I said, but we could be on time or we could be 8 hours late coming back from Santa Fe. I just don't know, because if you've ever seen the Southwest Chief schedule, I mean, it's kind of all over the place. I mean, they can run on time for a long time, for weeks on end, and then all of a sudden they're really behind. So it was a bet. Can we do it? Can we have a wonderful 3-day weekend in Santa Fe off of Amtrak? So here's that restaurant I was just talking about, and this photo is actually the freight house, the Santa Fe freight house in the back corner here, which is getting a new roof and all new stonework up there. And to Trinidad's credit, they've really done a great job of restoring a lot of downtown historic buildings and seizing on that as a focal point for visitors as well as the community. And I don't know if this is occupied yet, but one day somebody will be in here and we'll have this great building. So here is the depot, as it were, in Trinidad, and you can see the restaurants in the tower there in the background. And we drove down here in my Mini Cooper, which you can see there on the left, and you have this amazingly long platform here, and you have this wonderful information board that's stuck in a gravel field away from the parking lot, and it's about 200 feet on either side to walk around this fence to go over there to be close enough to read it. And I'm just like, I'm not sure which engineer decided this was where the signboard for the station needed to go. And I'm also scratching my head of why there's a picnic table over there overlooking the off-ramp of I-25. That's just crazy. But anyway. And I take a picture of this little kid. He is with his grandma, who is his caregiver during the day. And he's like the chief's biggest fan. And they look to see if the train's on time. And they come down and see the chief every day. And it was so cool to see, because all the conductors and personnel knew this kid and all waved him and stuff. And future rail fan for sure. And here it comes. And away we go. And here's a screenshot from one of the Amtrak trackers. And you can see it's only 32 minutes late into Trinidad. So we're off to a very good start on our way to Santa Fe. And you can see number 4 is red. So that means it's at least an hour and a half late coming the opposite direction. So we're gonna take a ride here on the Chief, and so a lot of these pictures are taken from the trip, and then I have a lot of pictures that I've taken from previous trips, not being on the train, and inserted them in here as we go along. So it's a little mix of both. And I love these old Santa Fe tourism signs that are still up. It's fantastic. And this gentleman here was the welcoming ambassador in Raton, and what a national treasure he is. What a super nice man. He just, like the little kid in Trinidad, He's down in Raton, meeting every train that comes through. And here he is waving us off in Raton. We got to get off there for a few minutes smoke break. Even if you're not a smoker, I highly recommend getting off. It's the view of Raton as we depart. And small remnants of ghost towns here and there as you travel through northwest corner of New Mexico. What a way to go. And you don't often think of elk in New Mexico, but here's one crossing at Colmore, kind of in the middle of the desert. And here's a shot of the Southwest Chief approaching the semaphore signals at Colmore. And gosh, is there anything more cool than seeing the semaphores in action? They're just it's an amazing piece of railroad history, and it's so great that they're right here in our backyard. This particular set here was removed, I believe it was in September of last year. The BNSF eliminated, I want to say, about 5 sets of semaphores during that construction phase, but there's still quite a few left. This is one of my favorite sets, in intermediate at Wagon Mound, and you can see where Wagon Mound gets its name here. And you can see the boards have seen better days, but they do go in and replace the wood on them there. But they're showing all of their I think they're like 110 years old now, something like that. What they built in, I want to say 1912, 1914, something like that. And this one here is definitely seen better days, probably bent over in a windstorm. And northbound Southwest Chief. So we're at Wagon Mound here. This is the, I guess would be the east end. The west end has, what do they call them? Searchlight signals. So we're going to watch them go through the motions here as Amtrak approaches. So the first thing you see is the siding as well as the main goes to a caution. Then the main goes all the way down, or excuse me, the siding goes all the way down to stop. The main remains at caution. And then as Amtrak approaches, it goes to stop. And here comes our train, zipping right along. And before he's even passed, you can see the signal in the background is dropping rather quickly. And all the way down, and poof, as he gets by the siding, the signal for the siding goes to caution, and then all the way up to go. So, and if you've ever ridden the Southwest Chief or tried to chase it, you know how fast they go down there. They're doing every bit of 79 miles an hour, if not more. They really, really fly. It can be super difficult to get more than a couple shots of a train before it just pulls away from you. This is my wife, Lisa, there on the right, and we've just arrived in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and that's Santa Fe's La Castanada, which was an old Harvey House hotel and restaurant, and it had just recently reopened for guests. There's another view of it there. And Lisa was kind of like, why don't we stay there? And I'm like, yeah, but let's go into Santa Fe. And you can see that she thoroughly enjoyed the lounge car. And the Southwest Chief going through some loops, just a little bit west of Chappelle. And passing one of the semaphore sets at Chappelle. And I can tell you, it's really hard to take a picture of a semaphore from a fast moving train, as I found out. I'm kind of like sitting on the floor to be low enough to get this shot. There's a lot of hidden things back there that you don't see unless you're on the train, like this wonderful bridge over this dry wash. You got to spend a lot of time creeping along a dirt road to get here, or this set of semaphores out in the middle of the desert. And this area or siding known as Chappelle was, I hadn't been there before until maybe 5 years ago or so, and it's become one of my favorite spots. So this is the East End, and Southwest Chief coming through the same set. And this is the West End. And it's sunrise. And again, courtesy of my drone. It's got a wonderful curve here. And this is number 4 going the opposite direction at Chappelle and high desert for sure. And more of the same there at Chappelle. So let's go on to Santa Fe. At several points, the highway, well, you follow the highway most of the way, but like most railroads, not all of the way. Just a moment, please. I'm trying to get my cat out of the way here. She loves to come and visit, but she kind of ends up standing on the keyboard and causing things to go awry. There's really like 3 sets of passengers on Amtrak. You've got rail fans, retired people, and lots of Mennonites. And then you kind of have your crazy people. So there's this Herzog train in a siding. It kind of surprised me. I wasn't expecting to see anything on the line because most days there's only 2 trains on that line, and that's Amtrak, the Southwest Chief. So I took this shot, and you can see that gentleman in the black shirt, and he's got his, he's facing away from me. Well, as soon as I took the shot, he turned around and saw me taking a picture, and he freaked out and started yelling at me. It was just really bizarre, and that's a very uncomfortable position to be in. You can see the car is pretty empty, but that's Amtrak. You never know what you're going to get. Downstairs, the cafe at the bottom of the lounge was pretty well stocked, which was great. We didn't partake in any of it on this particular leg. And of course, they always use up one of the booths there for their condiments and all that stuff. And we arrive in Lamy, and Lamy is, or was, I don't know if it still is, a very jewel of a station. It was an extraordinary place at the time. And Lisa's gotten off, and we got our overnight bag. And so we've paid $35 a piece to ride this train round trip, because it was like a half price thing that Amtrak had. If we wanted to go on to Santa Fe using their van connection, it would have cost us another $70 a person. And so we decided not to do that. And I'll tell you what we did instead here. And this is, Lamy is also the end of the Santa Fe Southern. You can see they have this passenger car in the background here. And inside the depot was a bar with all kinds of fun things like this little Santa Fe train. And one of my favorite things, free peanuts and beer. So I had to have some beer. And I talked to the locals there. And we asked about getting a ride into Santa Fe, and the bartender who was being trained on how the bar worked there was kind enough to be our Uber and drive us into Santa Fe, and I paid him like $25 for doing that. Very nice. And they have all kinds of great little souvenirs in this shop, and this depot was rented out to an individual who ran it as a bar / coffee house / restaurant. And I'm pretty sure that Amtrak had a falling out with them and kicked them out of there. And now it's empty again, unless that's changed, which is a real shame. And we'll see more pictures of that depot on our return trip. So let's go into Santa Fe itself here. Here's a little model of the Santa Fe depot. And here's the real thing with the Roadrunner, which I had never seen before until this trip. So just a couple shots of the Roadrunner, and Lisa and I had a wonderful time in Santa Fe, hanging out at the markets and stuff. And the Roadrunner, this is, I guess, Sunday service, so pretty quiet. And just passing the marketplace with this huge fake water tank that they've built as a, it's kind of a billboard for the market, Santa Fe rail yards. And we had lots of red and green chili, which of course is what New Mexico is all about in my mind. And we headed back to Lamy, and again, this is some equipment of the Santa Fe Southern, and Chip Sherman had some pictures of this caboose and this locomotive, and they've both been repainted by a local Santa Fe artist. And I will tell you that is probably the most unique paint job I've ever seen on a locomotive. It's more of a somebody's work of art or vision, if you will, than what you would suggest as your typical railroad paint job. I don't have any pictures of it, but they're out there. And right next to the Lamy Depot is this wonderful old reefer that's been turned into a gallery, and it's pretty cool. And we arrived plenty of time to hang out at the Lamy Depot because the train was about an hour late, but we didn't want to miss it. And this is Cindy, who ran the depot. I don't know if she still does or not. And it was so great. You could sit out right on the platform and drink a beer and wait for your train and have lunch and listen to live music. And I'm thinking, all depots should be like this. And they have a lot of fun with Amtrak. They even have this sign here like, hooray, number 3, you beat number 4 to Lamy today, which it's supposed to be the other way around. But, they hold up these placards and have a good time with the crews. So we pull out of Lamy here and almost immediately pass number 3 going in the opposite direction. Up to top of Glorieta Pass, and past another one of those cool old Santa Fe tourism signs, probably from the mid-60s. And this one's a little bit hard to read, but says Pecos Mission, built about 1617 across valley. This one is really hidden in the trees, and I don't think you would find this unless you were on the train. The only reason I knew it was there is because I'd seen it on the way down and had presence of mind to be looking for it on the return trip. And just a couple of shots off the rear of the train, some of the semaphores that you can't readily see or get to. And most of the semaphores are now ending up in this enclosure with barbed wire on top in Las Vegas, New Mexico. And the Castaneda Hotel again. Looking forward to staying there one day soon, I hope. And making our way back north again towards Raton. And the scenery, you know, is spectacular, especially in the evening light. Chasing cows out of the way. And we're passing trucks on the interstate. That's pretty cool to be in a train passing trucks. Probably one of the biggest disappointments of the trip at the time was that Amtrak would not allow regular coach passengers, i.e. me and my wife, to eat in the diner. That was for sleeping car passengers only, because that was part of their fare. But they had all of these empty seats, but we weren't allowed to use them. And you can see sleeping car passengers being served at the back half of the car, where this side of the car is completely empty. And I walked in here and quickly was frowned upon. But I got in there long enough to take a shot of what we were missing, which was like the land and sea combo at $39. But all of this food is free if you're in the sleeper and unavailable to you if you're in coach. I believe Amtrak is going to change that policy, but I don't follow it all that closely, so I'm not sure where we're at with that now. It's crazy. So meanwhile, back in coach or steerage, these are our food options, and they don't have any of these. They've run out of every item in that picture, and they've run out of every item in this picture except for the garden salad, so we opted for that. And then we arrived back in Trinidad, and I was thrilled to see that somebody had broken out the passenger window of my Mini Cooper so they could steal an empty paper bag as well as a lime green coffee mug that we had there on the console. And they got nothing else. So that made it a bit harsh for me. It was a great trip up until that point, but then we got back to Trinidad. We needed to go to Walmart to find some plastic and some tape so that we would not freeze to death on the way home. Very, very discouraging, and gave Trinidad a black mark in my book. But life goes on and things keep changing, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with this wigwag signal. It was the last wigwag signal on any US main line at Delhi, Colorado, and it was replaced in March of this year. So it is now gone. The semaphores remain in places, but not for much longer. So I suggest you get out there and see them. And that's under the Southwest Cheese section there. Does anyone have any questions on that?
Did you even bother to file a police report?
Yes, we did actually have the Trinidad police come by, and they just kind of looked at it and said, oh, yeah, somebody broke your window. I'm like, yeah, okay. And they didn't really tell us whether it was a common thing or uncommon or whatever. But they, we gave them the information. Yeah, just kind of disappointing, especially you don't expect that in a rural area. I think where Trinidad is having trouble is they seem to attract a lot of young people who are not necessarily homeless, but call themselves travelers. And there's so many pot shops there because of the border. They congregate there. They want to find some pot. And the weather is pretty mild and they just start hanging out in town. And that's probably what leads to that kind of thing. I don't believe it was somebody who actually lives in Trinidad that did that, but you never know.
I think, wasn't there a rumor that the Santa Fe Southern was bought by some sort of a celebrity or movie star or something like that? Have you heard that?
That is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, it was bought by George Martin of
Okay. The Hobbit.
Game
No.
of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Thank you.
Oh yes. Oh, sorry.
And actually,
Yes.
when I was on my way to Farmington in July, apparently they're looking at doing more artistic and theatric things. I met a couple gentlemen who had been who were on their way back from Santa Fe after meeting with Martin and other representatives of the railroad about various like murder mystery trains and that sort of thing. So there are plans afoot.
I've heard there's lots of plans afoot to get something going again, which would be great to see, no doubt about it.
Well, and New Mexico has a pretty active film industry too, so they may easily find ways to work that into some of the filming. I have a little trivia bit for you about that, the Delhi wigwag. I had a small part in knowing the right people to talk to with BNSF, and I think we've managed to get that donated to the Colorado Railroad Museum. Last I heard, that wigwag had gone to a BNSF signal maintainer shop somewhere to get just rehabbed. And I think it's going to end up in Golden in the near future. I need to check on when that might happen, but I think that's where that's supposed to happen, because that was in Colorado.
That's super cool.
Nice to hear.
On the Santa Fe Southern, there was an article. They've got a conflict with Rail Runner for the commuter service. So who knows what they're going to do. Rail Runner scaled back because of COVID, but they're starting to ramp back up again. Who knows? But they're dependent on the Rail Runner's track.
Oh,
Okay.
Probably for those last couple miles into Santa Fe is my guess, right?
I think a lot more than that, because they used to go down Lamy, but it was one of the things that was, the article was really about the Rail Runner, but they said, well, these guys got a conflict with it.
Well, Lamy they own that track, but I think it's where they get closer to Santa Fe is where the Rail Runner starts using their track. Anyway, I don't know a whole heck of a lot about the Santa Fe Southern. I've never actually ridden it. I've only just seen it hanging around. So if you've got a chance to ride it, good for you.
I wish we had a picture of their new paint job. I've heard it's really wild. I have not seen one, but I guess it's different.
It's really interesting. It's like it's kind of like a fairy tale fantasy kind of thing. It's maybe like a mural more than it is your typical paint scheme. It
must have been
really
expensive.
out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hand painted by some artist, and Chip just happened to be down there and took pictures of it and the caboose, which to some degree now matches it.
Do they have just one locomotive right now?
That's the only one I've ever seen. Oh no, I take that back, Dave. They had two on the property. I'm told the one that I showed with with a really good paint job on it is the one that doesn't run. and the one that looks horrible does run. So, but I don't know what it looks like today, but well worth checking out. All right, should we go on to our next segment here? Am I going too slow? Is everybody doing okay?
I had a question about
Sure.
when you were going over by Glorietta Pass, and then you showed the sign of Paco's mission since 1617.
Yeah.
Was that in that same area as Glorietta Pass then, or?
Yeah, it was about, I want to say it was within 10 miles west, or excuse me, 10 miles east of Glorietta. So if you go to the
Okay.
Glorietta siding, yeah, it was right in there somewhere. And I've driven that frontage road there,
Mm-hmm.
and I could not see that from the road. I had only
Okay.
seen it from the train. It's pretty well buried in there.
Because I was there in Easter 2020 and went over the old ruins from, and I think that was what it was Paco's mission, but I wasn't quite sure. I'll have to look it up on a map. But it was amazing. It was they were all from that era, 15, 1600s, and all those
So
ruins were still
so you're
there.
saying that's still an historic site?
Yeah, it's a historic site there. Yeah,
Oh, I'll have to check that out
really
next
cool.
time I'm
I
down there.
suggest
I love
stopping and
that.
looking. Yeah, it's beautiful. So, yeah,
That's
thanks.
great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see if I can remember what we have next here. Chasing Big Boy. So yeah, there's been a lot on the internet the last couple of days and how terrible it was chasing Big Boy this last time around. Most of these shots here were taken in November of 2019 on its last legs as it was heading from Kansas. I'm going to start in Sharon Springs and follow it to Lyman, Colorado. And then I just updated this program and I added some photos in here that were taken in August. So we'll just get into it here. So I drove all the way out in the cover of darkness to Sharon Springs because it was a very cold morning. And I knew that the steam would be fantastic, and I was not disappointed. This run by alone was worth it to me to see a locomotive like this with all the steam condensing as it came out of the stack. Just fantastic. And if a couple of sharp-eyed people might see two pheasants flying away out there on the right, scared off by the train. And yeah, wow, was that cool. It's the first time that I had actually, well, no, I guess not. I had seen it I'd gone over to Promontory, but you could actually chase it out of Sharon Springs. I saw a lot of this, a lot of waiting to get ahead of it kinds of things, but you could get ahead of it. And you can see the line of cars there, but again, the steam was well worth it. It's set up for this particular shot as he's coming around this curve, and yeah, this is probably my favorite shot from the trip. Just love those old elevators. And this gentleman on the right, we're all lined up here to get the shot, and he just comes running out of nowhere, decides to plop down in the grass over there. Thankfully, he's wearing camouflage, but one of these days I'm going to have to Photoshop him out of there. And coming through first view, Colorado, and of course, first view, that sighting comes from where you can first go over the hill and see the mountains in the western distance. And another shot at first view. And the thing about a big steam engine like this, they have to stop a lot to check on things. And so here's the crews checking things out, and great opportunity to not hang around and get ahead of it. Here we see Ed Dickens being passed up a little bottle of water, which he's going to pour on some part of the engine there to cool it down. I have no idea what he's up to. Checking things out. I think it's a lot of people have kind of disparaged the big boy a little bit, like, oh, there were so many people. It was horrible. I couldn't see anything, whatever. But for the general public, this is fantastic. Like, these kids here probably never seen anything like this before. And UP is should be commended for doing this, because nobody else is. And quite frankly, I feel like the big boy is going to become a victim of its own success, because it has such a great brand, the name Big Boy. It brings people out, like, this is the one to see. But will the crowds be too large? Will the chasing be too crazy? And UP will just say, no, we're not doing that anymore. It's too dangerous. The same thing has kind of happened with Flying Scotsman in England. They have a terrible time keeping crowds under control when that locomotive is out. And let me see here. I believe this is the quick stop at Kit Carson. And I just took a overview shot here, just kind of show the crowd that has showed up just to check it out. And the engine was probably here maybe 15, 20 minutes. And onward. This is just outside of, I want to say it's Wild Horse. Yeah, I think that's what it is. And no, that's not an actual deer. This is an abandoned one-room schoolhouse, and somebody has stuck a taxidermy deer head in the window. I have to say, it did liven things up there. But I did manage to get this shot off the front porch of that same building. And just like a bunch of wild turkeys standing in the field, we have rail fans waiting for the arrival of the train. A nice orderly photo line. Some people, however, they like to get up close. This couple here has decided they're going to stake out a spot on the rails. And here comes our train. And thankfully, this couple decided to get off the rails and let it by. This is in Hugo, Colorado. Another quick station stop, and Hugo is probably best known in railfan circles for having one of the Union Pacific roundhouses, which has been undergoing a remarkable transformation. You can see it has all new smoke jacks, all new windows, and they're trying to turn this into an event space, and they're getting there. It's really pretty impressive. And here's an aerial shot of the roundhouse now as it stands. And into Lyman, and unfortunately I could not get ahead of it between Hugo and Lyman. If you know me, you know that I am a Rock Island fan through and through. It's my road, and this is probably the only time a big boy has ever been on Rock Island rails, and right here at Lyman next to the depot. That's pretty cool for me, for sure. Spent the night here before continuing on to Denver. I believe it was 2 days later. And you got to give a little credit to the diesels that were helping out. Pretty darn cool. I've also done a lot of photography work out on the Kyle Railroad. So this scene is very near and dear to my heart. And this is just a shot of Ed Dickens. And I just wanted to say, he's like the perfect person for this job. to watch him work the crowd, to watch him interact with the people that have come out is truly magical. He is so good at his job. And here he's picked up a puppy of one of the spectators and is talking to her about her dog and interacting with her. And I'm sure she's going to go away from this experience just thinking so much about the big boy and Union Pacific and how cool that was. And you just can't buy that kind of publicity. It's just, he does a great job. So now I got a few shots from about 2 days later. This is in North Yard in Denver, and we're in the midst of a snowstorm as the big boy is preparing for the very last day of its long journey back to Cheyenne. And it was pretty spectacular in its own right. Love that snow. And it's pushing back across the Platte River here to reach the UP main line to the north. I was working this day, by the way. I'm on the job here. I decided to stake out this spot by Commerce City to wait for him because I needed to go back to the office, i.e. my house. And this is still pre-COVID, but it was such a nasty day that I didn't go into work. I went rail fanning instead. But so I got this shot of him leaving Commerce City. And Sand Creek Junction, if you know it, is at the end of the train here. And back to work I went. So I threw in a couple of photos from when I was lucky enough to hear about the big boy doing its break-in run after being silent for over a year up in Cheyenne, waiting for COVID to die down and all that. And so it came to Denver, I believe it was something like August 4th, 5th, something like that. And here is a guy who is very enthusiastic and is so excited to see the big boy, as was I. And I just shared in his enthusiasm. And here we are in Greeley, and it's pouring rain, and he's out there. Good for him. And again, this is what, for me, this is what this is all about. It's having big boy interact with the railroad, or excuse me, having the public interact with the railroad through big boy is probably the best way to put it. Giving them the reason to think about it and not hate the railroad when they're stuck at a crossing and that kind of stuff. It's great. This is probably the best, I don't know, all around wedge shot I've ever got of this thing. As it's coming through Gilman, I want to say. And down by Fort Lupton. I'm not sure what this is, some kind of holding pond along the tracks here, but made for some interesting silhouette action. And I've been wanting to do this shot for years. There's an old wooden boxcar in this field along the tracks, and I was just trying to, you just have a couple minutes to spare between shots, and thankfully this locomotive was stopping a lot because they're trying to make sure they'd worked all the kinks out of it. I got on top of the boxcar, and that worked out pretty well, but I thought it worked better as a black and white. So there it is. And coming into Sand Creek. And by the way, this is about where the train was going in the opposite direction for that snow shot that we saw earlier. And that's our third segment. So I'll stop there a minute and see if anyone has any questions before we move on.
The town name was probably
Gilcrest.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because Gilman's up on the Tennessee Pass. but that's all right.
Hey, a couple of notes. Did anybody catch the diesel number that was helping the big boy? They numbered it to 4015. And it failed on the way into town. And so when they went home, they put the Rio Grande commemorative unit. And you're right about Ed Dickens. I was working the Operation Lifesaver booth Labor Day, and he was nonstop with the people. And he never ran out of things to say or taking a personal interest in somebody. And, you know, some of the rail fan questions are like, so stupid. And he's so polite and so nice.
You got that. Is that you, Wally? It sounds like Wally.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, he is really something. And I think you said it best there. He takes a personal interest in the person he is talking to and really speaks to them.
And he has an incredible memory for names. I know him, but he remembered me, and I haven't seen him for probably better than a year. And he said to say hi to my brother, and those guys haven't hung out 10 years. So yeah, he's a class individual.
Yeah,
Really something.
fine Union Pacific employee.
Somebody asked the question, maybe it was Kirk, where is Sand Creek? That is the intersection pretty much where the UP crosses the old CB&Q line there at about Interstate 270, just north of the refineries in Denver.
Yeah, that diamond is directly under the 270 highway.
Uh-huh.
The one picture showing the bridge, you're going over the bridge, I think just before Commerce City, was that kind of near Riverside Cemetery over there?
Yes, it is. Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
what I thought.
the old Rio Grande Beltline bridge.
Okay. Yeah, that's where my great grandfather was there. Cool.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Wally was talking about the 4015 diesel that went with it on this trip. I think they outfitted it especially so that it would work in tandem with the 4014. And actually, Wally, I don't think it broke down. I think they wanted to have the UP 1989 there as a nose-to-nose, nifty thing when it was on display here in Denver. And then the reason they put that into the train on Tuesday is as soon as they got up to Cheyenne, most of the, I think 6 of the passenger cars went back to where they keep them in Council Bluffs. And the 1989 took them and just zipped on east before dark on Tuesday. And so I'm guessing maybe the 4015 will get to stay in Cheyenne, and maybe that'll be the diesel that they keep with the big boy. And they probably picked it for that number. And I think they had re-silvered the trucks, and they had painted the green on the nose, you know, the anti-reflection thing. So I think the 4015 is going to be the one that stays with the big boy. But I don't think it was broken.
I'd heard from one of the UP guys that it did fail, but the 4014 can pull that and 20 other diesels along with it. So apparently they had some kind of a problem. It's not a new unit; it's a much older unit. So.
Oh yeah, it's got some miles on it. Yeah,
but they will keep it running, and I thought it was particularly nice that they numbered it the 4015.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool too. I was not able to see it on this last go round as it came through. What was it, 2 weeks ago?
It was actually a week ago today. It was the Tuesday last week.
After Labor Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had been on display all day on the Monday, or 6 hours on the Monday, and then the Tuesday it went north.
And the Rio Grande Heritage Unit was a nice touch. That really, it was facing the 4014. I don't know how many people noticed it, but it was a nice touch.
For sure.
I think Ed probably requested that because Ed's an old Rio Grande guy, so that wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You were talking, Brian, about how that really relates to the public and how many people out there in the wilds of eastern Colorado would ever get to see something like that. I guess I have to blame my dad for making me interested in trains at a very small age. And he grew up out there in Burlington, east of Lyman. on the old Rock Island. And so I dragged him out there in the fall of 2019. I said, you need to see this. So we went out to Deer Trail, and that's where we started following it. And, my dad's 90 years old at that time, and he didn't get out of the car, but at least he got to see it run across the prairie. So that was cool for me. And I hope for him.
That is cool. That is cool.
Definitely.
His part of the state. I couldn't get him out to last week. I tried to get him to go see it again, and he said, no, it's 2 years later and things have changed. So there we are.
Yeah, but the UP brought the two of you together to share that memory, and that's wonderful.
Yeah. Something to see. But you're right, it's drawing more and more people all the time. And I could easily see where it could be a problem, because even in your pictures, you could see just how many knuckleheads have no concept of keeping back. And Ed and company have been saying for weeks before that thing went on tour, please stay back at least 25 feet. And just like in one of your pictures, most people will kind of line up realizing that if everybody stays in a line, we all get a good picture, but there's always got to be that one person that just has to be in front of everybody else. And it doesn't matter that you were there 2 hours before he was.
Yep.
It's just,
Thank
that's
God
when
for
I kind of
thank
wish I
God
had
for-
a pocket full of ball bearings at that point, but
Well, thank God for Photoshop. It's made life a lot easier. That's for sure. I got to say. And a lot of times, Dave, I like to include people in my shots anymore because they make it. I mean, it's not like this is 1947 again on Sherman Hill.
yeah.
It is what it is. It's a rail fan event, so I think showing people is part of the scene.
No, your guy with the wild shock of blonde hair. I mean, you can certainly see the enthusiasm on that guy. He's up on his toes. And
Oh yeah. Thanks, Dave. I really love that shot.
yeah,
And
just wave it
Yeah,
over.
that was cool.
I left my house around 4:00 and started driving north, and I'm going, when am I going to see this train? When am I going to see this thing? And I finally got to Greeley, and I pulled across that crossing just as I hear it blow its horn, and here's this guy freaking out.
And his bike was funny too. It had that big trailer on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had
Hilarious.
quite a big rig on the back of it. Yeah, he's obviously a local character for sure.
Yeah.
So I pulled out my old March 1870 KP map. I was trying to find, for one, I didn't know, is First View just over the Kansas-Colorado border?
I think it was the first place that the pioneers could see Pikes Peak.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Brian,
But
maybe unshare your screen and we'll go back to the gallery view or something like that.
Well, I have one more segment.
Oh yeah, that's
okay.
right. You got some more shots.
Yeah, I have one
Okay.
more segment, and we can move on to that if people want to see some shots from the Victorian Roundup. Hopefully,
And if people want to leave, they can always leave, and the rest of us can watch your stuff.
yeah, hopefully I'm keeping everyone awake and all that. I'm not, pacing this okay. So let's move on here and see what we can see here. So as you said in the introduction, they had this Victorian Roundup down in Shama. I went down there for the Friday event where they were going to run 2 double-headed trains from Antonito all the way to Chama over the length of the railroad. And that was the only time, if I'm not mistaken, that they ran over the entire length of the railroad. So one train would be coal-fired and the other one would be wood-fired only. And this is Antonito early in the morning, and you got 425, which is actually the 315 there, and then the 2 Woodies, as I was calling them there, on the far right, getting ready. And again, what a spectacular event that they put on. There was a lot of hiccups There's no doubt about it, but I loved it. And here are the woodies that are coming to grab their turn at the water spout. So just some quick shots of them leaving Antonito. Here's the coal train led things off with an all-passenger consist, and all of the paid riders were on this train, and there were no paid riders on the Woody train, which is this one here that followed up. And those two engines are so tiny compared to what we just saw, and you can see they don't have much of a train, but even still, they seem to struggle. It's amazing what people were able to accomplish back in the 1800s. This is just a little bit west of Bighorn. Comes the coal train, followed by the Woody train on the same curve. And they stop at Sublet, and it was really crazy town there at Sublet. So I drove to Osier and hiked into Rock Tunnel here. So here he is coming out of there. And what I really wanted to do is get some drone pictures here, and I totally blew it on the Woodies. But I did stick around and photograph the regular train with my drone. This is Toltec Gorge. And if you're really sharp-eyed, you can see a certain person standing there on the rocks on the left-hand side. I have to Photoshop myself out of my own picture. And hiked back out again and had enough time to photograph both trains leaving Osier. And then back over the mountain to Los Pinos, and they're doing some run-bys here. And they're also doing a crew change because they're way far behind. And you can see the track above the locomotives here too. After it's come around the loop, it's on its way to Cumbres. Kind of interesting. And two trains again at Los Pinos curve. They did some run-bys here, and that was wasn't a big boy crowd, but there was a lot of people here. And what jewels these are. I mean, they're just like pieces of furniture. And they almost look like, and maybe it's because of Walt Disney or something, they look like caricatures. They don't seem real to me. But you know, you look at that builder's plate, and both of them is 1875, and they're probably within 50 numbers of each other out of Baldwin. And you just kind of go, wow, I can't believe these things ran. I can't believe they run now. And coming past me at speed. And I don't know if there is like some kind of limit on the number of people you can stuff into a tiny cab, you know, like a phone booth back in the 50s, but these guys they've pretty much maxed out this cab with folks. And this is the little pond that's, I always get the name of this curve wrong. Is it Tenderfoot? The one at
Tanglefoot.
Tanglefoot. Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, I always want
And
to
that
say
was you down there, huh?
Did I get in your shot?
No. One little Photoshop bloop. I'm actually surprised I'm not in your shot here.
Well, you are. And that's what I was going to say to you, Nathan, because no, actually I started up above, and like the people up there were not very nice. And they were kind of like, well, you can't stand there. And I'm like, well, I'm not really going to stand here. I'm just kind of checking things out. Well, you can't be here. And I'm like, all right, I'm going down to the pond for the reflection shot. You guys can stay up here. Yeah, yeah, I don't know, it was awkward. So hopefully it wasn't an anyone shot, but you know, they let everyone off of this train so they could do a run by, and then they put everyone back on the train and hustled it up to Cumbres. So when the Woody train came around, none of these folks that paid good money were there to capture it coming around this curve. It was kind of sad. And here's the reflection shot of it coming around. And Nathan, there's a person standing on the hill way over there on the left. That probably isn't you, but I know Jim Wren was up there on that hill. And they got at the top of Cumbres, and as the Woodies have traveled around the system, they had spotted gondolas of firewood for them, and they're constantly having to rewood them, and it's a very lengthy process, and it usually involves chains of people handling these logs up to the tenders. And so they cut off the 168 and the 425, took the passenger train down by itself. And can you spot the photographer in this shot? He's right along the tracks, just a little ahead of the engine. Okay. Yeah. I'll Photoshop him out later. So this is, I don't know what this rock is called across from Windy Point, but that's run. This is a drone shot, but then looking down in the valley as it's making its way to.
I think it's called Kodak Rock.
Is it Kodak Rock?
I think that might be the one.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And for some reason, the 425 was having problems, and it took him well over a half an hour to get from Windy Point down to the crossing. And the sunset that night was absolutely spectacular. So rather than chase this train down, I went back up to Cumbres to see what the Woody was doing. And they were just hanging around here, and I don't know what they were waiting on exactly, but I was glad they're waiting so I could get some shots because the sunset was spectacular. So if this looks like the train from hell, or the train to hell, it's because it is the train to hell. So after these people had paid good money and made it all the way back down to Cumbres, that train arrived very, very late into Chama, and they still had a dinner train to run. So this is the dinner train getting ready to depart. It was supposed to leave at 5:30. It's now leaving at 8:30 at night. This train did not get back to Chama until 3:30 in the morning. So a very, very long night for people. And the next morning, they spotted the Woodies next to the remaining old wooden section of the roundhouse. Pretty cool. Have them side by side. Just look at a few of these details here. The brass banding, the pinstriping. This is one of the driving wheels on the number 4. Quick shot of the cab. Sand domes. And I'm not entirely sure what this mechanism is. It's some kind of oiler, looks like, but I'm just a photographer. I'm sure you mechanical types know exactly what this thing is. And you can see both their builder's plates are 1875. So part of the reasons why things got so far behind is it just took so long to service these engines, and you can see that they're adding wood to the tender the old-fashioned way with an end loader. And so they had to like make several trips. And meanwhile, the faithful have gathered and everyone's taking this all in. And the end loader is going over to this gondola and grabbing wood as these guys are throwing it in. And I can assure you that piece of wood that's in the air did not make it into the bucket of the end loader, but bounced off its cab into the ground. So it took a while. And what was really interesting, at least for me, I absolutely found this fascinating, was when they went up to the water tank in Chama, neither of these engines had taken water from this tank before. And they realized that they could not get the spigot into the tender tank hole. It was just out of alignment. And so it resulted in some action like this. We're spraying all over the place as they were trying to figure it out. And like this, which I was loving. And then this shot here. And yes, the guy down below, he's getting his bib overalls filled like a bathtub with water. He was completely soaked after this. Super fun. Not necessarily for them, but I loved it. I think this guy is the owner of the Eureka. I don't know for sure, but
no, that's George Sapp. He's one of the crew.
He's one of the crew. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you for.
I think Dan, the owner, may have not been feeling so good, so he didn't get to make as many of the trips as we would hope.
Okay. Yeah, he seemed like somebody who was really happy. He must be the owner. So I was thinking maybe he is. I don't know. But we're full of water. We're full of wood. They're moving out of the service area, and we're going to get going here. So the idea is to run these two engines up to Cumbres, which they've never done before. And here they are coming past Fred Duke's tree. And yeah, this was a pretty good shot for sure. I was really happy with the scene. And I'm standing here with about 50 of my closest friends. And you can see how small these engines are just by that guy standing in the entranceway to the cab. They're just tiny. And heading up here past Weed City, you can see it's a very small train, but these engines are going to have a hell of a time on this 4% grade. And there's a lot of waiting around going on. And here they're stopping to, I think, load yet more wood from the gondola here on the siding. Before moving on here past, I'm not sure exactly what this facility is up here. It's this ranch. It's kind of a dude ranch, or it's very private, whatever it is. Do not walk on their property. So here's the scene in terms of people following the train up there, and not quite big boy, but pretty big crowd. So I managed to beat him to Cresco, and here he is at Cresco siding, thundering up the mountain and coming by me here. And this is as far as he got. The number 4 had some issue. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody knows exactly what happened. I do not know what happened. I had gone on to Wolf Creek Curve because I had to walk in and I wanted to set up for a shot there, and the train never came. And then we discovered that the train had been disabled and it became a hospital train. So they tacked the 425 onto the back of this train, and this is train going back downhill with the smoke coming off the 425. It was a shame, but it was pretty darn cool seeing this while it lasted. And I have a personal obsession with this rock. For some reason, I love shooting this rock. It's a nice view of, and you can see the wheel arrangements there of the two. They're similar but different, and just gorgeous. So, and the next day, I just took a few shots of the regular train. This is the train coming out of Osier on its way to Los Pinos, and I just threw a few in here because, you know, even just on any old day, the Cumbres in Toltec just puts on one heck of a show. And here he is rounding the corner. You can see the tracks that he's just come off of in the background there. And this is this locomotive is from 1925. So 50 years on from what we just saw in the wood burners, this was the state of steam technology. And to see these engines side by side, you can see what a leap that was, technologically speaking. And I think this is my final shot. And Nathan, I think this is where I ran into you. You had gone down to that crossing for a shot as well. And,
You got the better shot.
well, thank you. And I will leave it there for everyone tonight. And I'm going to see if I can't stop sharing my screen. Yeah, there we go.
I was glad to see they put the tourist sleeper on. We rode the first weekend of the San Juan to Mexico Express, and they had a hot bearing on the troops on, I want to call it a tourist sleeper. And so we never did get it, but they did explain to me why the three of the cars are red and the tourist sleeper is green. It has to do with the era that each guy decided to model. Apparently the tourist sleepers were gone early and the cars were done by Cats, and they were in a later area. So they're red and the tourist sleeper is green, but I did see it. And I can tell you what, I think I'd take a sleeping bag. I'm a Civil War reenactor. I'll take the sleeping bag and go on the ground, because they're all wood benches with no padding, by the way. So, but a beautiful restoration job. That stuff is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. When you go into either of the coaches and all the screw heads are aligned the same way, you know somebody cares about restoration.
Well, Wally, I'm going to go on a Friends of the Cumbres, Friends of the Cats trip here, another week or so with the 168 and the tourist sleeper. And I'm really looking forward to it.
You really wanted, and it was an extra fare car. It was a Pullman, but it's a long way from what I think you and I remember as Pullmans.
Yeah, they didn't last very long as sleeping cars before moving on to being turned into work cars.
And that one sits up high too. I think somebody explained to me that originally it had 33-inch wheels, and right now it's got something shorter because somewhere along the line the taller wheels had been lost or taken or borrowed or something. So it looks odd sitting up as tall as it does. It sits up noticeably taller than those red cars that it was attached to.
Was that the car that was restored in Colorado Springs?
I believe so.
Okay.
That is correct.
Yep. They sometimes call it the immigrant sleeper. Yeah.
Wasn't engine 20 running too though?
Well, it was not running when I was down there. It was in Antonito, and it ran, I believe, I was there on Sunday, and I want to say it ran on Monday and Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
It was not originally planned to be part of the Victorian Roundup. It ended up there kind of at the same time, but
Oh, okay.
yeah, it sort of had different trains and different timings. But
I see.
it is still down there now, and I think like Pete Laro's going to do possibly a charter with it, and then there's also a some sort of a thank you to the donors from both the Friends of the CNTS and maybe the Friends of the Railroad Museum, people that donated for its restoration. That comes up in a week or two as a special train.
Ooh, okay. Might have to head there.
Brian, did you say you were going to ride the San Juan Express?
No, this is actually a charter, a photo charter put on by the Friends of the Cumbres.
I belong to the Friends, and I'm too old to work on trains anymore, so I just send them money. But that's a great group. When you see what they've done, and you get their book,
Oh, yeah.
their magazine on how they rebuilt the tourist sleeper.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Friends, and I was really blown away by the craftsmanship. It's just, I've tried my hand at restoration. It's really not my thing. I think I could go out and paint mileposts and do that kind of thing, but to do the woodworking that they're doing, it's really impressive.
Yeah.
Well, I'm member 67 at Illinois Railway Museum, and I know how much work goes into the slightest amount of, and open up one of those cars, and next thing you know, it's like one of those home remodeling shows that they find out termites have eaten all the studs, one of those deals.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way,
Yeah,
excellent
yeah.
pictures. Some of that stuff is calendar quality.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. I do.
I think whatever the problem was with one of those wood burners was, I think they were able to fix it the next day. I think I read or heard somewhere that the reason they put the 425 on was for extra braking power coming back down the hill. I'm sure they didn't need it for the pull, but probably the air pressure was probably helpful. And then I think maybe Nathan knows this, but I think they got the minor problem fixed the next day. I had also heard that the Glenbrook, the whole time it was down there, was running at a pretty low pressure. So as you said, they didn't have a whole lot of pulling power, and they were small engines to start with. I don't know that there's anything wrong with the Glenbrook. Maybe that's the way it was designed, or maybe that's the way they just felt safe running at this time. I'm not sure.
I remember working on the Eureka with Dan Markoff when I worked in Durango. And one of the problems they had was the kind of wood they burned. If you don't burn the right kind of wood, you don't get the BTUs out of there, and it doesn't create enough heat. So the wood they use has to be a certain kind of wood. I don't know which kind it is, but it requires that you burn really high BTU burning wood. That may have been a problem. I don't know.
A harder wood, I guess.
Needs to be a hardwood.
think?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Brian was also talking about how long it took for them to load up the wood. And I was out at the Railroad Museum today, and I was talking to Sharon McGee, and she said that they had to be very meticulous on how they loaded that just a certain way. You couldn't just dump in a bucket full, because that would cause too many air gaps. It had to be stacked just so that you could have enough wood to get you where you needed to go. So it was very labor intensive.
I got to load it in 2001 on at Railfest up at Rockmont. So yeah, but I could see even more so how it was perfectly stacked in there to get the most BTU per mile, I guess.
Yeah.
If you notice in some of those shots there, they stood up those sticks of wood all the way around so that they could pile the wood even higher above the level of the tender.
Yep.
Kind of built a fence out of it, if you will.
Yeah.
But, one thing I was thinking, can you throw a few lumps of coal in there to up your BTU, or is that just out of the question?
Oh,
don't know. Yeah.
Just to mix it up a little bit, because I've worked a lot around steam threshing engines, and they will do that sometimes. They will throw some coal in along with the wood. I don't know if you can do that on these engines.
I'm not sure either. I know, Kate is supposed to be a wood burner up in Como, but I've also heard that it was actually able to burn coal in it also, and it was built in 1912. So I'm not really sure on that either.
I've had a bit of experience with wood burning locomotives. And
Okay.
I agree with everything that's been said. You really, the wood you need is the heaviest wood you can find. The heavier the wood, the more heat's in it. And it's got to be the right size. And in the firebox, you have to stack it right up to the roof. And then you have to wait. You know, there's a considerable time lag. And it's not easy to actually do that. No. And you get a lot of splinters. So wood burning is best not done. Of course, we don't have trees now either.
That's a problem too.
There's that, but well said.
Well, certainly not trees of hardwood, you know. I mean, in your country, it'd be oak. In Australia here, the one to get is river red gum, which is a very, very heavy, thick wood, and it lasts forever. And they used it for railway sleepers. So the thing, in our early days in preservation here, we got old railway sleepers, and we tried to cut them up, but of course there's a lot of ballast stone in amongst them, and it doesn't do your saw any good. So really, you could only use them in locomotives that had long enough fireboxes to take the whole thing in one go. About 7 foot long or more, I think, 7 or 8 foot long. So, yeah, wood's all very well.
And in southern Colorado, we don't have a lot of oak.
No, I'm sure. I know that. I know. So I think it's a problem.
John, I love your Australian accent. I love to hear you talk. Say something.
Oh, well, yeah. And of course, you mentioned about coal. Yeah, we do. We've done a bit of that, mixing the coal in. That's very effective.
That's my question. Why couldn't they start using the Kate in Como as a coal burner? Be easier, I think, than trying to scrap all this wood. They're going to run out of wood.
Yeah.
Coal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we might have to talk about that one.
I thought I had heard, as far as the number 4 in Como, was that they thought that since they had almost no grade, they weren't going to need a lot of pressure, and it was going to be easier for them to get wood and cheaper than to get coal. That's what I had been told.
Yeah,
because it's not really so much of a working railroad as it is a working museum. That's how it was explained to me.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
How is that poor little engine now? Have they really fixed it?
Oh, it's getting better. Still in the hospital. We got the new cylinder head for it, but a few days before Railroad Day, we had our guy out in Paonia that remade the cylinder head come out and inspect it all over, and he found a crack in the piston too.
Oh,
Well, there was quite a good photograph in our newsletter, but rail report, but I couldn't see well enough. I hope the actual cylinder casting wasn't damaged. Didn't seem to be.
I don't think the cylinder itself was, yeah, but the piston, I guess he put in the die to check it, and he found a crack in the piston.
Yeah, I mean, that might not be the end of the world, really.
No, I don't know. I guess.
But it would have been very sad if the flange had broken on the cylinder.
Oh
casting.
yeah, it could have been worse.
So there's a lesson there. The cylinder head was actually a sacrificial part, wasn't it?
It is, and I was told that is the cylinder head is designed to blow.
Yes.
Although the piston still was damaged, but.
Well, normally the reason for blowing would be water compression, too much water. But, what actually happened where the piston actually hit it, that'd be a very rare occurrence. And
yeah. Well,
but anyway, the cast iron cylinder head broke and saved the engine, I would say. And I'm what I'm leading up to is to say, well, I hope they're going to use a casting again, not perhaps fabricate a steel one or something like that.
I think they use the same material, although it looks like it's steel. I was told it was the right same material as the other one.
Well, it needs to be cast iron, really.
I think it was.
Anyway,
Pretty
I
sure.
suppose I hope they can get it all back together nicely.
Oh, I know. He's guaranteed us for next year, he said.
Yeah, yeah. I was sorry for you guys who are actually going there and having that disappointment.
Oh, yeah, it was rough. So far, it's been every other year now. He's ran.
Just a side note, all of the engines from Klondike Mines were coal burners. All of them were saved. There's 3 of them in a museum in Dawson City.
Really?
The 4th one is down here, but they were built as coal burners. And there's pictures of them running to, and they served mines, and they were hauled supplies to the strip, to the dredges and stuff. It was quite a little operation.
Yeah, I didn't know about the other ones. Wow.
Yeah, they're all there. And we were there 2 years ago, and I wanted to see them, and they said, well, we don't have a train guide. And I said, look, I'm a retired engineer. I speak train. Well, that won't work here. So yeah. Worst to worst, they could probably get parts off the ones in the museum in Dawson City if it really got critical, because they're all identical engines.
Where?
Dawson City, Yukon territory. Sergeant Preston, you know.
Okay. Well,
and his Wonder Dog King.
Okay. Maybe.
Well, even if they needed a pattern.
Yeah, that too.
Well, that was some
Good to know.
fabulous pictures.
Yeah, really
Cool.
good stuff.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
The nice
Good
thing
work,
is,
Bryan.
you don't have to drive home.
That's some stuff around Santa Fe that I've never really tracked well, although I've been over Gloria to pass a number of times, but I sure appreciate that section of it. Was really neat to see down through Wagon Wheel. And yeah, there's some really interesting railroad down there that's not very well known.
Right.
Yeah, and it's I love going down there, and you with those 2 trains a day, you got a lot of downtime in between. You can go out and explore and find new spots.
That hotel in Las Vegas is worth going to. I've heard and seen a program about it. It's gorgeous. So bring your wife back down there and stay in the hotel. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I haven't seen that when I was there. I'll have to check it out.
We stopped there the last time we were going to my brother's in Phoenix, and we had dinner in the restaurant. And if the rest of the hotel is as good as the restaurant, it's neat. We go to Las Vegas, that Port 262 that sits out there. It's like so sad. But the Roundhouse is still standing at the south end of town when that was a helper district.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, Las Vegas itself is a cool town too, and that town square is actually 1 mile, 2 miles away from the depot. That's worth going to see. It's kind of hidden. You would never even know there's like the second town away from the depot. That's absolutely fantastic.
You have to go to what they call the plaza, because that was their first. And then when the railroad came to town, they said, we're putting our station over here, guys.
Yeah, but that plaza is fantastic. There's a hotel on the plaza and a couple of restaurants, and really neat.
Well, thanks a lot, Bryan. That's been, it was good variety. I think it worked out fine to have, 3 small shows. Everything's good.
Great, yeah.
It was wonderful.
4.
Great vignette.
Yeah, 4.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
there were 4. Right.
We only advertised 3, so there was a bonus program.
Yeah, bonus program that I threw in.
That was kind of a highlight.
That's
I
just
didn't get the
coming
4th
attraction.
one free. All right.
That's just the Rocky Club giving you more for your money every
That's
month.
right. Value added, ladies and gentlemen. Value added.
Well, our marketing
right.
department's on the roll tonight.
Always. That's right. All right. Well, I guess if nobody has any questions for Bryan, maybe we should wrap this up. And thanks for joining us, John. You get the long distance award again.
Absolutely.
Thank you for a very, very, very good program, and I enjoy the friendship too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We
Right
will,
here about the
Nice.
wood now.
yeah, we'll
Nice
try to
having
find a
you.
way to include this when we go back to meeting in person. Yeah, we want everybody to have fairly reasonable expectations next month, assuming that we can go back to our usual plan, but we'll do the best we can.
I know you're working on it. By the way, you must excuse me. I've been eating my lunch.
It's okay.
It's Wednesday lunchtime
They
here.
told us they didn't
That's
notice.
true.
That's right. You could give me the winning lottery numbers. You're a day ahead of me.
Yeah,
I think you're like 16 hours ahead of us or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty right, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Appreciate
John,
it.
I think
Appreciate
Brian.
that. I appreciate the Zoom meetings. So I've been a member of the club since 1972, and I have never attended a meeting before you started doing the Zoom meetings last year.
oh, that's great.
That's
cool.
really something. There you are.
Yeah. All to be considered, gentlemen. Trust us. We understand that. I think on behalf of the board, that's some direction we're really going to try to go. So.
I think a lot of organizations are taking that sort of decision now.
Yeah, I think there's a way to do it. I belong to another operation where we've been able to go hybrid as we've gone back to in-face meetings. So see what we can do. So I appreciate everybody help tonight. Nathan, again, thanks for being the webmaster on this, and Dave for all your hard work. And we'll see everybody again next month, and I'll see the board on Monday, hopefully. So.
Okay.
Thank you again, Brian.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Good night.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Good night.
Night.